Okay, picture this. You walk up to a local swimming pool, and you see a sign that says, "Please use the toilets, not the pool." Obviously, a perfectly reasonable request, right? But now, imagine right next to it is a second sign that reads, "Pool for members only." Read separately, each sentence makes total sense. But when you read them together as a single message, well, that second sentence suddenly forces a hilarious, completely unintended reinterpretation of the first. This classic example from linguist Charles Fillmore perfectly captures the magic and honestly the challenge of what we're talking about today, how putting words together creates entirely new meanings.
Welcome to This Explainer. I am so incredibly thrilled you're here because today we're going to demystify a wonderfully fuzzy, highly debated, but universally fascinating concept. We are asking the big question, what is discourse? From academic texts in Polish and Russian, to Uzbek linguistic studies, to English social theory, this concept is discussed all over the globe. But what does it actually mean for you and me? Let's figure it out.
So, here is our roadmap for This Explainer. We'll be hitting 1. The gift of discourse, 2. The discourse community, 3. Power and big D discourse, 4. Constructing reality, and finally, 5. Beyond just words. We're literally going to zoom out our perspective from basic grammar all the way to massive societal power structures. Let's get into it.
Number 1. The gift of discourse, language beyond the sentence. Okay, let's dive into this first section and look at discourse at its most foundational, micro level.
At its absolute most basic linguistic definition, discourse is simply language above the sentence, or just language in use. It's naturally occurring language. It's basically the difference between studying a single isolated word in a dictionary and looking at how a whole paragraph, an entire conversation, or a written text actually functions out there in the real world to communicate a message.
This diagram brilliantly maps out our exact journey today. Right there in the center, we have the text itself. The words on a page or the sounds in a recording. But that text doesn't just exist in a vacuum. It's surrounded by discourse practice, the process of how that text is actually produced and interpreted by living, breathing people. And then, wrapping around all of that is sociocultural practice, the larger societal and institutional situations shaping the whole interaction. It's like a giant puzzle, and we're moving from that tiny inner box all the way to the outer box. Number 2, the discourse community, sharing goals and values. Which brings us perfectly to our next level. How does language act as the glue for specific groups of people? Enter the discourse community. Essentially, this is a group of people who share a common communicative purpose, common goals, values, and really specific ways of communicating to achieve those goals. And here is the fun part. You belong to multiple overlapping discourse communities right now. You might be a university student, a community volunteer, and a member of a local sports club. The way you communicate, the jargon you drop, and the beliefs that are prominent, they vary wildly depending on which community you're actively participating in at any given moment. The linguist James Paul G. gives us some incredible, tangible examples of how these communities interact, sometimes forming these long-running historical conversations or even clashes. Think of the ongoing societal conversation between creationists and biologists, or, incredibly, the complex, ongoing conversation in Los Angeles between teenage gang members and the LA police. In fact, some LA police officers are literally leading academic experts on the grammar of gang graffiti. The police and the gangs form overlapping, deeply entwined discourse communities. Wild, right? Number 3. Power and big D discourse, the systems we carry. Let's see how this builds into a major conceptual level up, shifting from small community texts to human identity and history. James Paul G. calls this next level discourse with a capital D. Big D discourse isn't just about what you say, it is about who you are. It's the socially accepted ways of thinking, valuing, acting, and interacting that identify you as a member of a socially meaningful group. Here is the mind-bending part. It's actually helpful to think that we aren't the ones talking. Instead, we are simply the carriers of these massive discourses. They existed long before we were born, and they'll outlast us. We just enact them. Now, when we talk about big D discourse, we absolutely have to talk about the philosopher Michel Foucault. For Foucault, discourse is this invisible, intricate web of power. Discourse is literally define and delimit what is possible to say and what is impossible to say within a particular institution or era. And actually, it goes deeper. By extension, they dictate what is possible to do. Those with power in society ultimately control these discourses, using them to regulate action and reinforce their own authority. Number 4,
Constructing reality, the world through words. This means discourse isn't just describing the world. It is actively constructing the everyday realities we live in. Let's see exactly how.
Take a look at these two statements side by side. Both of them are explaining the origin of the universe. Scientific discourse gives us, the universe began with the Big Bang. Religious discourse, on the other hand, like that of Roman Catholicism, might say, God initiated the universe. These are two entirely different discourses providing completely different frameworks, boundaries, and meanings for the exact same phenomenon. The discourse you operate within literally builds the reality you experience.
And this reality building system, it is constantly churning. Linguists describe discourse as an auto-poetic system, which is just a fancy way of saying it's a system that reproduces itself by continually generating new texts based on old ones. But, not every text changes society. Millions of articles and everyday conversations just vanish without a trace. But a truly impactful text, say a globally broadcast speech by the Pope, leaves massive traces. It gets quoted, it gets debated, modified, rejected. It actually alters the ongoing societal conversation and changes the state of the discourse itself.
Number 5. Beyond just words, multimodal discourse. So far we've talked mostly about language and text. For our final section, we need to shatter that limitation. Discourse isn't just written or spoken. It is an embodied, visual performance. We can actually see this embodied discourse in action right here. Researchers Sasha Lucioni and Gary Marcus are both delivering TED Talks, and they're both trying to persuade the public about the severe risks of artificial intelligence. They are participating in the exact same overarching conversation, but what's really interesting is how their multimodal discourse, their gestures, their clothing, their staging, their tone could not be more different. Let's break it down a bit. Sasha Lucioni builds trust through empathy and connection. She uses humor. She actually references that viral AI image of the dopey Pope in a puffer jacket. She uses super conversational language, personal experience, and highly dynamic hand gestures. Gary Marcus, on the other hand, leans heavily into a cautious institutional ethos. He uses very plain phrasing, stands super grounded, and actually builds his credibility by openly admitting the limits of his own expertise, saying things like, "I don't actually know how to do that." They're both highly effective, proving that we use our entire bodies, our aesthetic choices, the whole shebang, to participate in discourse.
So, the absolutely crucial point is this. Discourse is the water we swim in. From that funny mix-up of signs at a swimming pool, to the way scientists try to save the world from AI, all the way to the massive invisible structures of power that dictate what we can even imagine to be true. You aren't just speaking, you are carrying forward deep historical conversations. As you leave this explainer today, I want to leave you with one final provocative question to analyze in your own life. What historical conversations are you carrying without even realizing it? Keep questioning the systems of meaning all around you. Thanks for hanging out and keep learning.